And we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Need a motion to adopt the agenda.
Motion.
Motion, I have support.
I'll support it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the first one up is Steve Schmagelski.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Steve.
I had sent a memo to Jennifer, basically about Mr. Higgins' position out at the airport. Well, when he was brought on full-time, it was paid for the CARES Act. The CARES Act grant has ended. However, I would like Mr. Higgins to continue in his full-time position. We could take the first year of his wages, which is $40,207 out of the airport fund balance, which is well over $900,000. And then we will pay for his position in the following years through fuel sales, which to date right now, since we took over on the 10th of December to the 29th of February, we have sold $21,907 worth of fuel. And this is, of course, during the slow part of the season. We're going to start getting the general aviation. So, yeah, we're generating our own revenue that we can pay for Mr. Higgins.
Hey. Any questions?
Well, the only thing, again, I know I'm broken record. We have a $1.5 million deficit. And, I know you're saying we got sales to cover his pay. But we need to figure out ways to fix the deficit before we continue. And I remember when we put him on full time, I literally said because I think you came to us and said we got CARES money that we can carry over. But I'm still concerned we need to start figuring out how to fix this deficit before because everybody still wants to fill a position and we only have so much money. So
It's true, sir, but we are generating our own new revenues to cover this expense. We're not asking for anything out of the general fund.
Chair, if I may ask a question?
Yes.
Okay, so Steve, let's, what courses of action are. So if we have a course of action where this was not approved, what would happen to the FBO, particularly the refueling operations out at the airport?
It would fail. The reason why we brought Mr. Higgins on in the first place was because of his extensive knowledge of FBO operations and fueling. He's the only one that's certified as a trainer and a safety inspector. Without Mr. Higgins, we could get somebody spun up, but we would probably have to pause fueling operations for at least 90 days while this person went through certification.
And we just recently took over the refueling operations at the FBO from a contracted agency, correct?
Yes, sir. That was on December 10th.
Okay.
So if we hired him back whenever we hired him, how is he related to fueling? If we weren't the one doing the fueling, did he work?
Mr. Higgins, when he was working for Coletta, he handled fueling for the big jets that they have there. He was dissatisfied with that job, so he went to work for Huron Aviation Services as a line chief, again, doing fueling. He left Huron Aviation Services. And when I found out that he was available, we hired him as quickly as we could because back then the mindset of the commissioners was to move forward and to take over the fueling on our own. So he was basically a treasure that just fell into our lap.
So the money he would be bringing in, you would be using it to pay back out to pay him.
Yes, ma'am.
So there's no profit or anything there.
There is. We anticipate that we'll probably generate about $100,000 in fuel sales. Again, $40,207 would be taken off of that to take care of Mr. Higgins. It's worth noting that we have already, as far as under low lead avgas sales go, we weren't having our own tenants purchase from us. Last year, we realized $396.85 in 100 low lead. This year, to date, we brought in $875 in 100 low lead sales alone. So everything is trending up, up and up for us. We've got people purchasing from us that weren't purchasing from the former FBO. So I think that $100,000 in income is a conservative guess. And obviously, we can easily cover Mr. Higgins with that money.
So what do we do with the other 60 or so $1,000? Where does that go?
What's happening now is as we sell fuel, AdFuel is keeping our profits in an account so that when we need to purchase more fuel, we've already done our initial purchase of Jet A and 100 low lead. So when we need to purchase more fuel, we won't need to come back to you for anything. That money will already be in an account. And then at the end of the year, we can draw off that account and pay whatever percentage to the county easily. If we've got $60,000 sitting in there, we could give the whole $60,000 to the county, but I want to see where we end up at the end of the year. But we're definitely going to be putting money back in the county's pocket.
And if we said no on this, what would happen?
If you said no to it, Mr. Higgins would not have a job, which means we would have to immediately halt fueling and try to get somebody spun up to do everything that he's doing right now. That would not be an easy task, given his years of experience, and he already had certifications. So I would say easily it's going to be a 90-day window where we would have to cease fueling. There'd be no fuel available at Alpena, either Jet A or low lead.
Any more questions or?
I don't know. I get what you're saying. I know when he came on, I remember specifically, he was 20 hours a week and the push was, let's get him full time. So we said we were going to use everything makes sense. But again, I feel like I'm a broken record because I say the same thing. You have a good pitch for your thing. They're all going to have good pitches. Everybody has a good pitch for why we need to do that. But it literally does not solve the fact that we have a $1.5 million deficit and we need to figure that out. And again, I'm not saying that that's wrong, but again, everybody that comes to us is always wanting more money. And until we figure out which way we're going to go with this deficit or what we're going to do with the deficit, I just keep looking at it as there's more money going out. And again, if you're saying that you're going to bring in $100,000 worth of sales, that potentially 60,000 or so could eventually come back into the county, that helps.
Because without Mr. Higgins, we can't do it. So there would be no additional revenues.
So is he then strictly going to focus on refueling?
He not only focuses on the refueling and inspections program, but he's also being trained up to be, he is in the position of an assistant airport manager. I'm probably only going to be in this position for perhaps 2 years. I'm going to finish the hangar construction projects, and then I'm going to retire.
Sounds like a silly, is this Mick?
Yes, that's Mick.
So he's one and the same? Okay. Okay, I'm tracking with you. When it said Edward Higgins, but he goes by Mick, I kind of thought maybe this was another third person, but he is one and the same. Okay,
It took me a little while to get used to that nickname.
I got it now. Yeah, okay. Just wanted to clarify that.
So he also does repairs.
Yes, he worked
Working on the-
extensively with Commissioner Konarshevsky and trying to troubleshoot the snow blower. He is one of the best trainers that we've ever had out there. The man learned quickly, very quickly, retains the information, and he's got the ability to teach it as well.
Okay. So does somebody want to make a motion or?
I'll make the motion that we continue Mr. Edward Higgins in his current position to be for FY24 to be paid out of line item 295-000-001, the cash airport fund.
Do I have support?
I'll support it.
Okay, we have a motion and support. Roll call.
Commissioner Francisco,
Yes.
Commissioner Kozlowski,
Yes.
Commissioner Fournier.
Yes. Okay,
Thank you all very much.
thank you. You have a nice day. Okay, next on the agenda, we have Judge Curtis.
Afternoon, everybody else. I have a magistrate here. I'm kind of covering the topic that she had of the going to the 40 hours. And then I have my issue that I kind of outlined in a memo. Did you folks get a chance to take a look at that? So in short, and I can get to the line item numbers, what I'm attempting to do is ultimately it's a savings to the county. But what I'm trying to do is restructure the district court right now with both probation officers quitting basically kind of simultaneous. It presented an issue as I kind of put out. The biggest issue that it has is with drug court. And what I'm realizing with drug court, since I've been here, it needs to be its own entity. When it has then, I'll just call them tentacles into officers as their duties. If I lose a probation officer, then it has an impact on both. And to me, right now, my focus is on the district court. Drug court is a specialty court. I have nothing but good things to say about drug court and our need for a drug court in the community, but you can't have a drug court unless your district court is functioning. And so what I'm trying to do is restructure it. I had been told going in that the reason we had two probation officers after there was a judicial task force and jailhouse reform that came out, I think in April of 21, that had a whole bunch of changes on the ways you're supposed to be incarcerating people, bond, and putting people on probation. And it's really, it limits it. And so I was told, well, we're keeping two probation officers because they're each going to do drug court duties. And that's how they have justified it to me. So now kind of have a clean slate. My thought is, and as explained, issue one, I just want to replace probation officer with the probation officer. So it starts off with the savings only because of where they're at in the time being new, as opposed to Officer Marquardt had been here for 2.5 years, and so it's about $1 there. What I intend on doing is making sure that that one probation officer can function in their role in district court. And I can do that through really honoring what the legislature has said, which is pretty much in district court, you start off, unless it's a serious misdemeanor, you start off with kind of the presumption that you're no probation, no jail. That's drunk driving's first and seconds even fall into. That's what the legislature says. So what I want to do, and we're actually working with Sheriff Department, is having more stuff done on bond, having more looking at people showing their compliance up front, and then making it a lot easier than to justify. If you don't have a problem with drinking while you're on bond for 3 months, if you show up with substance abuse assessment says you don't have a problem, it's a lot easier than the time of sentencing to say, you know, fines and costs because you've shown you're not a problem, and then can treat other people different. So I'm going to restructure that probation position so it works. What I want to do, and because I think as you folks are aware and has been, there's turnover in the district court. The turnover in district court has been because of a lot has to do with the volume of what's going on in district court. And so what I'm asking is to give me a chance to structure the district court the way we've been asking, which is for another person, is to take, instead of paying that chief probation officer wage, let me hire another clerk. And as I said, make sure that the probation responsibilities are addressed with the one person, but I would rather have the fifth clerk in there to be able to run district court, and then I'll figure out drug court from there, which leads to a request that I would like to have is for Nicole Hatch to be able to come in, at least in the interim, especially while Mr. Marquardt's here, until I figure out what we're doing with drug court, and allow her to take over case management duties. I'll figure out drug testing. We still have Mr. Weckward who's doing that, but having her come in, my thought was, in talking with her in hours and kind of knowing the drug court is putting it essentially on a $250 for its stipend. Even if that was per week, if that was to run through the end of the year, that would be $7,000. I'm asking you just to straight take that out of the opioid settlement fund. That to me is the perfect thing to use it for. And we covered this hatch out of that. And again, I'll figure out how to fund the drug court, not by coming and asking for it. And as it never has been out of the general fund, but that's in a stopgap. And so I guess that's the nutshell. What I can tell you is the way I work it down is essentially from the line item, you'd be pulling from the probation officer slot, and then we're just essentially increasing the deputy 2, the clerk typist 2, and the court recorder. That all bleeds into their request to go up to 40 hours. So those are the topics that I have, I guess, and they're all kind of intertwined. And so I guess what questions do you have? The way I calculate it out would be there's about $3,765 a year that would be savings if you do what I asked to do. That's
Where did you get the bulk of that? Because I did the difference between the 2356 and the 2455, I came up with 2060.
so here's how I did it. And I think the number I initially put in for Mr. Marquardt on the proposed solution was incorrect. I pulled it from headed down as Marquardt at $24.86 an hour right now.
So Tim was actually getting paid incorrectly for the past couple of months. So that's how you got that 2486. We just noticed it a couple of weeks ago and I got with the payroll clerk and she made the adjustment and he's currently reimbursing the money.
So 2455 is the actual amount.
Yes,
Okay, so then.
He was moved to the incorrect-
They're only gonna be higher than I used 2486, not
455.
2455. So, and the new person coming in at $23.56, I had it as $1.30 savings. And then I looked at if we have Chief Probation Officer Sue in at $28.93, and I bring a new clerk in at $20.27. That's $8.66 in savings. Add the two up and it's $9.96 per hour. And so what I did was looking at then that savings over a pay period. So it would be 80 times 80, which gets you to $796.80 of savings per pay period. Now, if we go to the 40 hours for each employee, including a second clerk, and what I did was took each of their hourly rates times 5 hours, meaning 2.5 hours per week, going from 37 to 40, totaled that up. That's $652 extra. The delta between those two is $144.80. So just by even increasing them to 40 hours and giving me a clerk yields that savings of $144.80 per pay period. That's where I times that by 26 pay periods to get to the $3,765. And as I said, the line item you'd be pulling from is the probation officer line item because both probation officers are in there. That would be the line item then that we would then, as I said, funnel to increase the deputy clerk 2, which is just one of the clerks, the clerk typist 2, which is the other 4 clerks, and then my court recorder would get us there.
Sudoku math.
Pardon me. Yeah, there's some math I can do, but that's about as far as it gets. So that's where I'm coming from. That's my ask. Like I said, getting into it, we've had a lot of turnover in district court. Part of it is we went from having a judge that had been there 16 years, a district court administrator that had been there 40 years, 2 clerks with combined experience of greater than 50 some years, all leaving, and then have the state tell us, oh, you got all new things you need to do. Guess what? We're setting aside everybody's convictions from all these old past years. Do it, we're going to make you, starting in June, we have to go to electronic filing. We have to have new computers, break up our office. There's a lot of change. And so that in and of itself creates change. And some people don't handle change as well as others.
I don't like change either.
No. So that's where I'm coming from. Everything I've talked to my clerks and talked to the people that have left, it has to do with the volume. We're never going to change the way that the people treat them at the window. And it's amazing. And what I would always ask is if any of you want, come down on a Tuesday at 8 o'clock in the morning and hang out for the morning till till we get done running through arraignments on all people. Listen to the window, listen to the way that these people are treated by people that are coming in, what their expectations are, what they're saying when they come up to the window and you don't have my paperwork yet. I just walked out of the courtroom and then just, it's amazing how disrespectful the community can be. And that's, you know, these are the people we're trying to hire to go up there. And I mean, I've heard every name possible called people. And I tell them, well, send them back into court, you know, and I'll deal with them. But sometimes it just doesn't happen. So it's not an easy position. There is a lot of volume. The volume's increased. I would rather, as I said, I'd rather change the structure and not have that chief probation officer and have a fifth clerk and allow them to go to 40 hours and have it set. We still have a savings. And I'm not asking to change it. It's asking to restructure because if not, it's gonna do this. And as I tell everybody, I'm just left for standing and I can't do all of those jobs and they can't even, you know, but I do believe that I can structure it such that we can get by without the chief probation officer.
So you'd end up with one,
One probation officer and they only do probation. No longer are they gonna then be a case manager in drug court. No longer are they gonna be testing in drug court. I will figure drug court out, but right now, seeing the turnover, I would rather have one probation officer and 5 clerks as opposed to 2 probation officers that are also doing some drug court stuff and only 4 clerks and because part of what had ended up happening is the volume was increasing. And so in order to do things, we would say, well, probation officers, instead of you can enter certain stuff in on your people, or, you know, it makes more sense than having my clerk sit with a person that's put on probation and go over all the paperwork. Why don't you sit down with the person and go over all the paperwork? Because you're going to be the one supervising that person and you have more time. Or, you know, probation officer, you can schedule your subpoenas for when people need to appear on a show cause, things that are in their duties, but the clerks may have been doing. We shifted back and that created some backlash.
I know you just had 2 new clerks that were hired there. So then you'd have 2 others that have been there. They have how many years' experience?
So right now, well, because whether you caught the wind, we had one clerk who put in her notice on Friday and Friday was her last day. And she was the new one we just hired, the one that was even recommended by Judge Black, that had previously worked in the prosecutor's office, that interviewed of the, you know, I'm goal oriented, I'm task oriented, I love busy, I can find solutions. And then her answer was, I didn't realize it would be this busy. So where we're at right now is I'm back down to 3 clerks. One of which is Jess has been there 6 to 8 years. Amber is probably a year, right? And then we have Sean, who's very new, but Sean came from, I believe, Clare County. And so Sean's a godsend because she's hopped right in. She knows exactly what she's doing and is doing wonderful. So needing to fill a spot and asking to have a fit instead of the chief.
So you're just trading up or trading, whatever you want to call it.
Judge, I'm sitting in for Bill Peterson, and so I didn't have a lot of opportunity to read your information when he called me about 11 o'clock. So I'm not as informed as I probably could be or should be. But that said, you and Judge Black are men of integrity. And my feeling is it's your department and you know how best to run it. And, you know, far be it from me to tell you, no, you shouldn't run your department that way. I think your ask makes sense. And I also know we have about 250,000 right around that amount in the opioid settlement fund right now that we haven't yet dispersed. And we also have the marijuana tax money that just recently came out and we budgeted for, I think it was 150 and we got like 260 or something.
236.
Yeah. So I think, you know, drug court, I mean, it's drug related revenue. And therefore it should be, and I think it has to be with opioid settlement money go towards.
And there are strings with those funds, and I'm not asking today to say, hey, I want to run drug court on this. It's just a stopgap, because otherwise then it's just, well, we're shutting the whole thing down and I'll figure it out and stay. But at least, like I said, for Nicole, and I talked to her and she said she would be willing to do it for that. And it's where, you know, I think it's just going to depend on the hours. Like I said, and that stipend I had down as $250. And if there were, calculate out the remaining weeks or months, if there's 7 months left at 4 at 28, so 250 times 28 was 7,000. that would be the max to get Nicole. And I think I did 7 months because it was through the end of our grant from the state, which would be through September. So that was at least where I was looking at as a benchmark of.
Gives you some breathing room and time to figure it out.
Or not, and yeah. There are other things that we're trying to get into place, working with the sheriff's department and community corrections of having pretrial release for the felons on bond and looking at ways of generating money through that and hoping that getting that in place, that pretrial release person, that would be then through community corrections dollars as a part-time position. Maybe there's the right person that we could then find some other grant money to run drug court. And or there's things that's hard for me to explain in the sense of this is my plan, other than I do think there's some things that are hopefully coming that we're working on that this will dovetail together and, hoping that there's a good solution for drug court, along with some ways to generate money for the county also through that, as I said, that more that pretrial side of supervision as opposed to after sentence supervision. So, and then the question of the 40 hours, I was hoping it wasn't a difficult one. At least I was involved in negotiations in a sense that I have a foot with the county and then I have a foot with the district court. So when the union stuff came up and then it was the whole payroll issue of the change between 37 and 40 and what to pay people, it just seemed to be a nightmare. And it was my understanding commissioners wanted them to go to 40 hours and we kind of had a couple that didn't want to do that. And guess what? Those ones aren't here anymore. And so all of a sudden now everybody's working 40 hours. So we might as well up it to 40 hours. And as I said, when I did my math going through on those, that would be an increase of $652 per pay period, which would be offset by the savings between the two.
Going to 40 hours would be a difference of 652?
Yep. And then that's where I came up with the savings of $796 from the two probation officer positions.
So I assume that it wasn't too difficult to then, because I'm reading this memo that we got, when we originally asked, I don't know when it was, but back to go to 40 hours. And now the memo says we're revisiting the language to approve the letter of understanding to change the hours to 40, back to, or to 40 hours. So there was no real big.
Well, and part of it was too, is I told my staff, I'm not going to go to the commissioners and fight tooth and nail to try to get another person when, in my opinion, we're leaving 10 hours on the table. If you're not willing to go to 40 hours and we got 5 staff and that's 10 hours, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to come to you and say, hey, I want a 5th person when all my people aren't working full time as is.
Well, that to me, it's a half an hour a day. And again, I don't know. I've never really thought about, I'm only going to work 7.5 hours today as opposed to 8. I don't think that in the big scheme of things, that's not that big of to me at least, it wouldn't be that big of a deal.
And I don't think it was, and I'll just be frank, I think what soured a lot of things that sometimes happens is when you go through contract negotiation and then you get stuck in a mindset of, well, if I give, that means they win. And I think there was some of that at that time. And as I said, some of those seeds are now gone and everybody's working it. Everybody's willing to do it. And I think it at least should be noted, and this was the thing that I'd mentioned before, is that nobody takes a break. They're entitled to 2 15-minute breaks a day, which is a half an hour. Nobody does that. And that was something I talked about in the beginning when I had some of the other turnover was I was having staff that would show up early, get things ready for the day, and then punch in and start. And that still does occur. They still don't take their breaks. And so that's the only thing I can tell you is, come down and watch. But I agree, the problem is it's a government job. I can't really do a lot it's not the private sector. I can't incentivize people. I can't give bonuses. I can't do things to help people that are doing well and to sanction those that aren't. But that's the hard part, because if they want to, the reality is it's a government job, and if my job starts at 8, that means I punch in at 8. Doesn't mean I have my desk ready, doesn't mean I'm ready to open the window, doesn't mean I'm ready to do anything other than clock in at that moment. And it's a government job, and so if I want to clock out at 4:30, because my time says I get 37 and a half hours, I clock out. And that's just because some people have that type of work ethic. Some people have the work ethic of, no, I'd rather show up early, get my stuff in order so that when I do punch in, I'm ready to go. I mean, that's just two different of employees. So when you're saying, I don't think a half an hour is much, it's not to most people, but it depends on your mentality. And that's why I said, I think that had more to do with the negotiations and then payroll and just some people being upset over it, as opposed to what everybody realizes, we're already working that time. It's exactly that. It's not a difference. So.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Jennifer, but didn't we, last year, I mean, personnel meetings, we had, the board expressed their desire for the district court to go to 40 hours.
That's what I'm saying. It was that you
Yeah.
wanted them to do it.
That's what I'm saying. It's like,
I think, and that's even.
you know, it's,
From a
be careful what you ask for, I guess.
Their benefits already match those of a 40-hour employee. They're accruing PTO and they're already working the 40 hours. They're just earning comp time from 37 and a half to
Right.
40 hours, but then their comp tanks are maxing out and they can't use the comp time.
Should we expect a request for a third or whatever, fourth window, however many, you're gonna need an extra window with these people now?
Well, there will come a point and we'll figure it out. And as I think you're all aware, the infrastructure on all of our places, everybody's filling it, and we'll work around it, but there'll be, some cost with that of having, as I said, with computers and that stuff, but we can put a person to work. There's plenty of things they can do, even just from filing that you don't necessarily, and not all of them are at the window at the same time. They take their abuse in shifts. But
Next up, tag team.
that's pretty much it. We've had enough.
Okay, so I want to get this straight because I
Yep.
don't have that much to do with
Okay.
court. You want a 40-hour-a-week clerk, one.
No, all non-union staff. So that would be, the clerks, my court recorder, and, everybody going to 40 hours.
Okay. You want just a probation officer. Instead of having two,
Yep.
you want one. And the clerk, Nicole, she'll be working drug court 10 to 15 hours per week. And you would like to have the
Oh, I don't think.
opioid settlement.
Yep.
fund
She
too.
would just be I think a 1099 contract employee. Pay her a stipend of $250 a week out of the opioid money to help drug court function. Yes.
I think what we need to do is I would recommend making different motions because we got the,
There's 3 components. truly,
Right, that's what I
they're
got.
all intertwined. There is essentially the saying, yes, you can hire a new clerk without replacing the chief probation officer. I think would be one thing. I think we're already interviewing for the other probation officers. I don't think there really needs to be a motion to replace that one. It's really the not hiring a new chief probation officer at,
switching it to a clerk.
yeah, switching it to a clerk and there being a savings there, that being one. All non-union staff going to 40 hours would be 2.
Yeah.
And then 3 would be Nicole Hatch or someone else, just so in case Nicole tells me I can't make this happen. I mean, she's told me she could, but if it had to be somebody else, just essentially a $250 a week stipend for a drug court representative, drug court,
Okay.
person to come in on the interim as a 1099 contract employee, that being paid out of the opioid settlement would be my request.
So
So
you have enough money to pay for all this except for the Nicole.
Correct. I'm saying my changes yield a savings of $3,764, give or take.
So I would say we peck away at this. So I'll make a motion to approve the first item to switch, I guess it was the first item.
So that'd be eliminating the chief deputy probation or chief probation officer and adding a deputy clerk.
Right.
And then we would move the funds from the chief deputy probation officer line to the
That's-
deputy clerk.
Line item is probation officer, covers both. So it's just blended in there, which is the 101, 286, 702.004 has both probation officers together. That's where I would pull from there
Remove,
to then fund a new clerk typist 2, which is 101, 286, 702.002.
and Kim wrote all that down. Okay.
Do you have a dollar amount that you would have to move since it's one line item for the probation officers, or we could look into that?
Only because then you also have to increase the deputy 2, which is just in the court recorder, which is another line, and they each have, well, I guess if we're pulling from it, it would be, I guess I roughly,
Well, we can do a budget adjustment too if we need.
all I know, and that's, it's there.
Okay.
And it's moving it from
So-
one line item that's budgeted to another, and it ultimately
No,
yields a savings.
that's, the bulk of that's gonna cost us for the clerk.
So the clerk that comes in is at $20.27.
And that's just gonna,
But we're not paying a chief probation officer $28.93.
$42,161.60.
so we could round up. Because again, if we need, at some point later on in the year, you need to make an adjustment, we can do the budget adjustment, but we need to make at least this motion to get that approved. So I would make that a motion.
I will support the motion of changing the chief probation officer position to a clerk typist position.
Yep, with-
Transfer the funds there.
With those line items that,
From probation to the clerk typist 2.
yep.
I'll support that.
I have a motion and support, roll call.
Commissioner Kozlowski,
Yes.
Commissioner Francisco,
Yes.
Commissioner Fournier.
Yes.
So next we have
Stipend for Hatch.
the stipend for Hatch, and then we have the 40 hours.
Yeah, let's do the
40
40 hours. I'll make a motion to increase it. Allow the increase to the 40 hours for, is just the.
For all district court employees.
It's all non-union.
No, they're union.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, I know you keep saying non-union. Yeah,
The 8 people,
I think there's 6.
6,
So it'd be the probation officer, 7 and 5.
so it'd be the District 88, District
Yes.
88
All of them.
union employees.
Yes. And
And
again.
there's a draft of an LOU in your packets.
Yep.
Yep.
And so again, that would be from the probation officer line item, which would have to then go into the individual job descriptions.
Well, are they all, is there one line item that,
No, those are probation's in as one, which have covered both. I have a deputy 2, a clerk typist 2, and a court recorder, and then I guess probate, well, and then the probation's gonna stay because you're. This probation officer is still under their line item.
yeah. So do we need the line items for all those?
Well, we have the one for the probation officer.
So that would,
We have the one for the deputy clerk, so I think we're good.
You want clerk typist 2 or court recorder?
I would, she's ready to go.
Kim would need for the minutes.
Okay, perfect. So I'll just start from the top. Deputy, there's a deputy 2. And that's 101, 286, 702.001. A clerk typist 2. And that'll have the 4 clerks. 101, 286, 702.02. And then my court recorder, which is just, so the 101, 286, 702.033. And then there will be a probation officer, but that money will still just stay in that line item for that increase.
Do we know what the amount is then on that?
I'll get with you or payroll to calculate the exact number for the 2.5 hours per week. And then I'll confirm the numbers with you before we submit it to the full board. Is that okay?
That's fine. And that's what I was just thinking. My math was off because I needed the probation officer, but the probation officer, it'll still be in the, if anything, a very small change, but it's not
Okay.
an increase. But yeah, we can sit down and I'll show you how I calculated the payout.
So do we need that number for this motion or at least?
No, I don't think so. As long as they understand our intent.
If I get the numbers from payroll, we can add it to the motion, and then, so when it goes to full board, we have it.
Okay,
So you made the motion, Commissioner Kozlowski, to in favor of the 80th District Court, non-union, union employees
Union.
going to 40 hours per week from 37.5. Is that correct?
yes.
Okay, I support that.
Have a motion and support. Roll call.
Commissioner Francisco?
Yes.
Commissioner Kozlowski?
Yes.
Commissioner Fournier?
Yes.
And the next,
Better of understanding that will go along with that to modify the union contract.
Contained herein.
Okay.
And I'll make the motion.
when is this gonna be effective? Next pay period?
That was all blank as far as when it would try to be effective.
The next pay period maybe, or
After,
Pay period would be starting the week of March 17th.
but this would be approved by full board because obviously,
Would be
finance, right?
on the 12th.
Yeah, finance on the 12th though, so.
So I don't know whether or not that gives enough time to
I would just make,
do the pay. I don't know what the payroll needs to do in order to make those changes. If you approve it on the 12th, can they get ready to go?
As long as we're able to get the numbers by the end of this week, we'll submit them to full board or finance on the 12th. And then we'll be ready to go right away,
Okay.
17th.
Well, seems to be little numbers seem to be causing issues. So anyways, that's all right.
Okay, I'll make the motion that we allow Ms. Hatch to be paid a stipend of $250 per week for not to exceed 15 hours a week at this time to run the community drug court, district court's drug court, excuse me.
And
And I don't know what the line item number was for that one.
I don't know what and again, that's out of the opioid settlement funds. You're talking to you. I don't know if I have to put in a request for a proposal through their subcommittee that they have now going on, or by coming to you guys can just say, since we ultimately hold the purse strings.
Yeah.
This is what.
well, I think we did that when we approved the budget request or budget for the sheriff. What was it? We approved, was it 90 something thousand, 97? Or how much came out of the opioid?
I'm not sure.
For his equipment.
No, was it, I thought it was for that position.
For the hunt position.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, for Hunt. I don't recall. You may be right, John.
At least my numbers put it out at $7,000, so I'm hoping we got $7,000 left in there.
I think
I'm pretty confident there is $7,000 there in there, Judge.
Okay, that's
we
kind
should
of,
have one.
okay.
Okay, so should I get with the treasurer's office to see if we need to transfer the money from the opioid to the new, and it would be a new line item number, I believe, for Nicole Hatch.
I think I would ask with Nicole Hatch, just so if Nicole Hatch or other person,
Yeah, it's the,
judge, someone just, like I said,
Position.
on board, but if for some reason something comes up,
Okay,
whatever it is, that she can't do it instead of having to come back, but that's my only. I don't know who, I don't have a 1A in line. I just have a 1, so that's counting on Nicole.
Well, if we approve the position, the name can be
That's all.
by you, so, yeah.
That's what I'm looking for. And again, that's as a stipend 1099, not county employee.
For the contract employees. Yep.
Okay, we have the motion, support. Roll call.
Commissioner Kozlowski?
yes.
Commissioner Francisco?
Yes.
Commissioner Fournier?
Yes. Thank you.
I appreciate your time, everybody. Have a good week.
Well, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, now we have Steve Musso, IT Director.
My request is to see if we can change the way that we calculate overtime for the IT department. Right now, the current policy is anything over 8 hours in a day, automatically time and a half and overtime. The The issue we have with that is that just the nature of our work, the things we do, don't necessarily give us the opportunity to quit right at an 8-hour day. We have updates that we have to do that we can't disrupt everybody because we have to shut systems down. So we have to do those after hours. They can work on jobs like just last week, they were working on the sheriff's department, body or the in-car camera. With the company that was there, they had to stay late because that company was still working on those. So we have those kinds of things, and if they can't, if they're calculated based on an 8-hour day, then I'm ending up paying out of an overtime account, which I don't have anything in my overtime account this year for some reason. So it makes it difficult where if we did it on a 40-hour work week, which is basically the recommendation or the general policy of the state of Michigan is based on a 40-hour work week rather than an 8-hour day. Gives me more flexibility to work with the guys to say, oh, you worked an extra 2 today, come in late tomorrow, 2 hours or something like that. So that it balances out to a 40-hour work week and it saves me on the overtime line. And it gives me more, I have some room for comp time and things like that way.
So being the resident expert of the overtime handbook policies that we have, why wouldn't this make sense to do this?
So the policy for all non-union employees is that anything over 8 hours in a 24-hour work period would be
24?
in a 24-hour period. So if you work over 8 hours and 24 hours, then it gets calculated at 1.5 times and you have the choice of comp or overtime.
I mean, when I first read this and what he just mentioned, it seems to me like, again, that's kind of how I am. I'm like, you hit your 40 hours and it's Thursday afternoon, and you don't want to, I mean, not that that should be the norm, but if because of some circumstances, it makes sense to be able to say, well, you've already got your 40 hours in, but if we're calculating it on a 24-hour period and you stayed 2 hours extra tonight, you're still going to have to do your 40 hours.
Mhm.
And we're still gonna pay you comp time or overtime or whatever.
All right, yep, that's,
Doesn't have any budget, he said.
so right now his employees are earning comp time. They haven't, they might have received overtime once, but we have a 40-hour maximum for our comp banks.
Yeah, which doesn't, I mean, it could fill up quick.
Mhm. And then Steve is gonna be going, he's reducing his hours
Yeah.
soon, so I know this is gonna probably affect the two over there with their time.
But if we can't just make this decision just for IT. This would have to be a change to our policy then.
It would have to be a change to our policy for all non-union employees, and then this would also change our time and attendance.
Yeah.
The scheduling in there, and the clerks would probably have to reach out to them and have new rules written. Because this is the way the system calculates it, and that's how it's always been.
So what's the benefit of leaving it the way it is? I don't know. I would think, like I said, if I hit 40 hours and I've got all my hours in, not that we expect people work as many hours as you can to have Friday off. But if there was a situation, you had to come in, there was an issue with IT Monday night and you worked an extra 5 hours, you get to Thursday and you've got, let's just say you had 40 hours in, you could say, well, you could come in tomorrow's comp time or just take the day off. I don't know. You're the expert at this stuff. I mean, does
It
that,
would just have to be a new policy. We'd have to change the policy, and then we'd have to have some kind of structure over our departments, because what if 2 people in the department planned on leaving early on Friday because they have their hours in and now they're left with no one?
Well, that's a supervisor's responsibility to,
well, but if in his
Manage
case, if he's gone and you got 2 people, then, and they both worked at the beginning of the week to fix some IT issue, we could run into problems. So that's why I'm asking, I'm like, why, obviously this was put into place originally for a reason. And I don't know what makes this benefit over what we're just talking.
I assume that the benefit for the county would be that you're guaranteed to have someone here for their scheduled hours, 5 days a week. If you change it to someone can have flex time and work over their 8 hours one day and leave early the next.
I'm not, again, I'm not recommending a suggesting that we have individuals work more so that way they can build up at the beginning of the week and then have Thursday or Friday off. I think their set schedule should be their set schedule, 48 hours a day. But again, in case of an emergency or unusual circumstances where somebody does have to come in, and I don't know, maybe this is perfectly fine. I don't know. I know that he doesn't have overtime in his budget, he's saying. So again, you could hit that 40 hours comp time. I don't know. I don't work IT, so I don't know how quickly that would happen. So
I do have a question. You're leaving, you're going part-time since leave now?
Mhm.
So that's 20 hours a week. So there's 20 hours a week not being used, he's going part-time 20 hours?
well,
He's gonna go down to 30 hours and then potentially 20 hours after that, but he has, I think, he has quite a few vacation days coming up. So I don't know how that's gonna affect the workload for the other two.
Well, I was saying if we have extra hours, because he's not gonna be using it for extra money, because he won't be using it. I don't know if it would pay to pay them the overtime, or, and I hate to say this, maybe hiring somebody.
So I think
hours a week.
the discussion was that eventually the IT assistant is going to eventually be the director. So that money is not going to be extra. Right now, it's going to be allotted for Steve, the director, until he transitions out. And then,
It's not an issue where we don't have enough time to get our work done so much as the way it floats in. We may have one day where there's somebody that's 10 hours. Well, that means now they've got 2 hours of overtime throughout the whole week, but the next week could be fine with no problems at all. It's just that certain things happen at certain times that make it go over that day because of our current policy. That means they have to get overtime for that time frame. Whereas if it was just an even balance over the week, I could give them some comp time, they could take some time off when it's available. Because right now, I know my guys already understand that all three of us can't be gone, obviously, in the same day. There's always somebody, there's two here as the general rule. Occasionally you end up with one, but for the most part, at least one person is here all the time. So it's not an issue of, so nobody will be there part of the day, any day. Someone will be there.
well, that's right now while you're still there. When
Yeah.
you're gone,
You're
there
gone.
will be two people.
Yeah,
And that obviously, when you have two people in an office as opposed to the three, it's more likely that you could have a period where someone may not be available.
It's possible, but again, the way we work things is we plan ahead to say, well, you've already had to work a couple extra hours. This person, you're gonna be gone, you could be gone these 2 hours as long as these people are here. Or I know I gotta do system reboots next week on Thursday, so I'm gonna have to work a couple extra hours. So, you can plan a lot of times what those hours are and make sure that someone's here.
Well, I know that. Like I said, with three people, I don't think that's a problem. And I think what I'm thinking of is when we're down to two, and I know we don't have to worry about that right now, but there's a stronger possibility that someone may not be available. Someone because people are going to take a vacation. One of the two is going to take a vacation and the other one's coming to work, gets in an accident and goes to the hospital, whatever, something like that. Obviously, you can't control that, but that's what I'm saying is there could be a potential where there's somebody not available, which again, that's something for further down the road.
All I'm asking is that if we have the flexibility to do that, if not, then I need to have some money in my overtime account. I mean,
well, if we monitor the comp bank so that they don't get close to 40, then we don't really need to do anything with their overtime line.
Yeah, because this isn't just, like I said, going to affect IT. This affects
Everyone,
policy.
yes.
And then again, I don't know if I don't thinking of my personal job that, again, it doesn't matter. I work extra today. I come in a little bit less tomorrow, whatever. I can do that. Different type of job, but again, we're looking at potentially changing the whole policy for how often does this really,
Instead of changing the whole policy, I think it would be easier as everyone should be monitoring their own comp banks. I mean, it's in time and attendance every single day when you clock in and you can see your balance. And then the department heads have to approve the employees' time cards every pay period. So they can see if someone's getting close. And if someone's getting close, then the employee needs to know that they need to take a comp day, or I guess the department head has to tell them that they have to take a day off. And with just two of them or with the three of them, they're just gonna have to arrange that.
and again, for the overtime thing, I think when he goes to part-time, because we've already budgeted some of his, or not some of his, we budgeted for his salary for this year, we could take that extra and then potentially use it.
Put it for an overtime line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't, I guess then I'm thinking of it that way. I would say leave the policy because again, we're gonna affect the entire policy, that handbook that we have, policy for this. And again, moving forward, you could potentially take some of his additional money and put it towards that comp time, or not comp time, but overtime.
Overtime.
Do you know if you need anything put into the overtime line right now, or is that something that might be brought up later?
Sorry, Stephen,
Do you need anything in your overtime line item right now, or is that something?
$300 and right now that's, I'm over budget.
Okay,
I mean, I'm not concerned with that necessarily because like you mentioned that once I go to lesser hours. I
right, we can just transfer it.
do that right now. I was just looking at, just gives them more flexibility to work with that and not have to worry about it as much.
Right.
Well, again, to your point about, if we have two people, I think that could be a bigger concern, having two people. And then again, the situation where you get to Friday or Thursday and you've got your 40 hours in, now someone may not be there. I guess my bigger concern would be we need to probably leave the policy because again, it's like Pandora's box. You start getting into, what may work for this office, then somebody else may be looking at it from a different perspective and we could get into, I guess, bigger issues.
Yeah, it could get.
Steve, even though you're reducing your hours down to 30 and eventually 20, you are still the IT director, correct? Yeah, I mean, I think that it's still up to you to ensure that you manage the time of your people. And if they need comp time because they've worked overtime, then do so. But you decide, who's going to stay and so that we don't have a gap in personnel there.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
And you could use your money from your salary for the overtime if need be.
yeah, in lieu of, yeah.
Yeah.
But I agree with Commissioner Kozlowski to change the entire
No,
handbook, or the policy, when there is a management technique that can be used and we don't have to bother with changing the policy. I would rather and prefer that.
That wasn't my intent or thought,
Okay.
that would,
But that would be the second order effect of doing that, is that we would change the entire handbook so you understand why we're a little reluctant.
oh. Any more questions?
I don't think we have to make any kind of a motion. We're just going to stay with what we got.
Stay status quo.
Mhm.
that's. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve.
The agenda. We have interim minutes.
So I presented the employee handbook back in January and it got pulled at one of the full board meetings. The treasurer's office and the clerk's office reviewed it and there's a couple changes that still need to be made. They gave it to me yesterday. Most of it is just, there's something that says it's something about a CEO and that needs to be replaced with a board chair or a county administrator. And then there is.
Had a CEO that we haven't been filling?
We don't have a CEO right now. There is something in here about security.
Doing pretty good with no CEO, aren't we?
So on page 30, it talks about our security department. We don't have a security department. So I don't know who you guys want to put,
Page 30.
yes.
I have two numbers on this one. One says 31 and one says 24.
The one's that pay, one's your handbook and the other one's the whole agenda.
Security, okay.
It says, yeah.
I see.
So I don't know if you guys want to put the maintenance or IT or sheriff.
Yeah, we don't need to hire a security department,
We're not looking to add any more positions.
No.
No.
but who would maintain that? I mean,
It's kind of broad because we have the sheriff's department that has Deputy Lash doing some security. We have the maintenance who manages the doors, locking of the doors. And then,
well, that's, I mean, it's almost like it's specifically someone's job to
Mhm.
secure that. But I mean, can we break that up and, between the sheriff's office and maintenance, they will handle these.
Yep. So I,
Make it as broad or vague or whatever.
Just eliminate security department out of there. The text can remain pretty much the same. We just, I'm gonna,
I think that was the main difference. But I just need to update a couple of things like that. And then I do have to have this approved by April. Otherwise, we have to submit this back to Guardian HR so that they can update or see if there's any updates with the law. And then they would put us out another 4 to 6 weeks. So if I can make those small changes and bring them, present them to the finance committee
Yeah.
next week, would that be okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
bring full board, good.
That's all I have for that.
Then you'll just let us know next week. Different things.
I'll redline that and then send it to you guys.
Okay, thanks.
Now you have an update on the county administrator.
Yes, I met with Amy Cell Talent this morning. And we had to update our timeline a little bit. So she said that she currently has 18 candidates for the county administrator position. She is going to present us with the candidates on April 5th. And then we were going to take that to the finance committee on April 9th. And then at that time, each commissioner will present the list that they would like to move forward with. And then she'll go around and do like a poll vote to find out which candidates have the most votes, and then we'll move forward with those.
You're gonna do all this via Zoom?
Yes.
so she's got 18 applications right now. And
We just literally posted it.
yeah, and
She actually got a lot from the township, the city, like local, a
And-
couple of other administrators.
Really?
That's good.
Yeah, so it seems like we have a pool.
and she's going to present the list of 18, or is she going to vet some of those and give us the top 10, for example, on 5 April?
I believe she's going to give us the full list of candidates that they have.
Okay.
And then
So we could have 97 people that we have.
we're going to review them in closed session at finance on April 9th. And then we will choose the candidates that we're going to interview. And she recommends the first round of interviews to be done on a Friday. That way, if any candidates come from out of town, they can take the weekend or the evening to,
And time in Alpena.
yes, explore the area. So I was looking at April 19th for that, for interviews.
April 19th.
And then I think there's a meeting in the morning.
We have the landfill meeting for MOA, Montmorency, Alpena, is on that Friday morning as it stands right now.
So perhaps 12 to 4 on the 19th.
That's
Should be back
fine
by
with
12.
me.
Yeah, we should be back. We're usually back before noon.
12 to 4 on the 19th. For interviews.
Yep. And so after the interviews on the 19th, we are going to fill, or you guys are going to fill out, I believe it's going to be like a Google survey like you guys did before, and provide feedback on the candidates that we interview that day. And we're going to turn those into Amy Cell Talent, and she's going to compile all of it together. And she's going to give us her feedback, and she's going to send that to us on Saturday, April 20th. And then we're gonna review the feedback and on at the full board meeting on April 23rd. And that's gonna be a public meeting as well. That's done in the public.
Can you, when you're, I'm tired, I'm trying to.
Yeah.
You have to
Yeah, I
put
can-
together a timeline
Yes,
for us.
I
and-
can email you guys the timeline.
No, that's good because I'm scribbling.
Yeah, write that fast. So I guess one of my questions is though, if we have all 18, currently 18, could be more, and then we're doing 4 hours of,
We're not gonna interview all of them.
okay.
No, I
We're
think
we're gonna vet that list down to.
We'll interview
reasonable-
less than 10.
Okay, all right, because if you had 8, that would be, one every half hour. That's doable.
Yeah.
But
We could squeeze it, we could try to narrow it down to one every 5 minutes.
18 is a bit much.
yeah, as long as we're going to narrow the list down for those who, from whatever the
Well, and that's kind of
list is.
what we said, and when we talked to her is, give us, and again, she's gonna review them, I would hope, and what she said, and then potentially give us a list of maybe the top 10.
Yep, so that's what we can review in the closed session on 9th.
On 9
the
April.
9th?
Yep.
Yeah. So then with this timeline, after the feedback is presented to the full board on the 23rd, then the board's gonna determine the next steps. So at that point, she said, well, either the first option would be to conduct additional interviews if you guys weren't happy with the candidates. The second option would be to repost the job opening and start from scratch. The third option would be to make a motion for deliberations with a specific candidate. And then that's when either the board chair or an attorney would do the negotiations with the candidate and draw up a contract. And then we would present the contract to finance on May 14th,
What attorney?
our attorney.
All right.
Yeah, that attorney?
That one,
Yeah.
yes.
May 14th, you said?
Yeah, so it would hopefully, with this timeline, we would be making a decision on May 14th. So from there, I anticipate we would have a county administrator in June,
Oh. Piece of cake.
around the corner.
Yeah,
Not a problem.
Got it.
Okay,
Yeah, 18 or 19. That's just too many. Yeah, narrow it down.
Yeah, we'll have to do that, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Any other discussion?
This month, we had just one separation from the district court.
really?
Yes, and we also had one animal control tech put in their notice, but we already knew that was coming. They were just here temporarily.
What?
Tara Jor, she's going back to the parks.
Revolving door.
So again, and to have, I understand the situation with probation officer Latuzik, that she resigned.
Mhm.
There was some, is Mark Quart's resignation due to that resignation, or is it something separate and complete?
I haven't spoke with him yet.
Okay,
I'll do an exit interview with him,
okay.
but
I'm just kind of curious. He's only been there a couple of years.
Yeah,
from what I've heard, I believe this was only supposed to be like a part-time position for him, and he came out of retirement or was going into retirement.
retired
From
from
the city police department, yeah,
City
he's
police.
a police officer.
I was surprised when he took it.
When he took the position?
Yeah.
Were you? Okay. Okay, yeah, I mean, it would have been nice if we could have got a little more overlap and they weren't leaving within 30 days of each other. I mean, but again, not my department, but would have made things a little, maybe would have made things a little bit easier, but I'm just curious. I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Okay, motion and support. Next meeting is on April 2nd.